What's up everybody, JJ here. Today I'm going to be helping you get time lapses finally working on your Klipper firmware. Here's some examples of some time lapses I've been getting. I often see this referenced online as the plugin that people don't want to give up when moving away from Octoprint to Fluidd or Mainsail. But after today, you're going to have time lapses working just great on Fluidd or Mainsail. I'm going to be showing you how to get this set up on Fluidd. I think there's a pretty close correlation between that and Mainsail. Some of the file locations on your Raspberry Pi might be slightly different, but beyond that, it should be mostly the same. Also, at the end of the tutorial, I'm going to help you calibrate your focus on your webcam. It was something that was bugging me. Autofocus is not great for a time lapse, and these webcams don't even have good autofocus to begin with. But I found a way to get it working, calibrated, and consistently working in the future. So stick around for that. So to get right to it, let's go on over to the computer. So here we are at the computer. The first website you're going to need to go to is the Moonraker GitHub. I've linked these links down in the description down below, but we need to download this Python script, timelapse.py. The best way I've found to download something directly from GitHub, if you only want one file, click on it, opens it up, click raw, then right click save as, and then pick somewhere you want to save it. And don't save it as a text, do all files, and remove this .txt. Right there, this is a great place for it. So next we need to get that file and put it onto the Raspberry Pi. I use WinSCP, and I use that also for installing Klipper, so you may already be using it. So you can just log on, and so you take that Python script you just downloaded, take yourself all the way back to the base, go to Home, Pi, Moonraker, Components, and paste it down here. It should be a small file like this, like 19 kilobytes for me. If you got something that's in the 300 range, then you probably downloaded it incorrectly. The first time I tried to download it, I accidentally right-clicked and clicked Save Link As, and then you're saving the link and uploading that. That's not the same as just uploading the Python script. The next thing to do while we're still in WinSCP, go back to the root directory, go to, where is it? Temp, right here. And then create this folder, just Timelapse. You just click right-click, new directory, name it Timelapse, just like this. And that's where all the pictures that your camera takes is going to be stored. Mine's right here, and it's empty. In between prints, it will clear that file out. And also when you reboot your Raspberry Pi, it'll clear that out. And that's all we need WinSCP for. Next, go into your printer's web page, whether that's Fluidd or Mainsail. I'm using Fluidd today, so you open it up, it looks something like this. Go down into configuration. We're going to be adjusting some of these files right here. The first one I would adjust is your webcam.txt. Go into edit it, and then right here with this line, you can set what your webcam's frame rate and resolution is. So since you're going to be making video out of this, you probably want a higher resolution. I set mine at 10 frames per second and 4K resolution. I am using a Raspberry Pi 4, and I'm not sure how these large numbers would work on something like a Pi W or maybe even a Pi 3. Let me know in the comments if it's working well for you, but if you haven't adjusted these from the defaults, this is a great time to change those. Hit save and restart up here. Next, we're going to be going to the Moonraker config file. Go back to the Moonraker GitHub. I'll link this one as well down below. And there's this Timelapse component, and this is the section you need to copy. So copy this whole section and move it into your moonraker.config. Go down to the bottom, and I've already got it pasted right here. I'll show it down here, and eventually it will look like this. Uncomment this section. You can enable it or disable it. You can just go in here and change this setting. True means it will take the pictures and do your time lapse. Auto render, this is another one that you can change. I leave it on true so that right at the end of a print, it will auto render. It only auto renders if the print completed successfully. So if you stopped a print halfway through or it for some reason failed to finish, then it won't render. I did create a custom macro so you can manually do it later. Right here, you can set your constant rate factor. This is kind of the constant bit rate of your output render. You can go out onto the FFmpeg website and go all through the different settings you can adjust here. This one I would adjust down to 16. They do say on the website 16 is where it gets basically as good as it's gonna get. Any lower is just gonna be much larger files. So leave it at 16. Also with the constant rate factor, using a smaller number will increase the time it takes to render your final output video. So if you want it to be a little quicker, move it up higher. Or if your Raspberry Pi is getting overloaded, just increase that number and it shouldn't take as long. Down here, output frame rate, I leave mine on 30 since I record all my YouTube videos at 30 frames a second, but you can adjust that here. Down here on output path, uncomment that. And this is where you want the final videos to be put. This one I did change to my G-code files. So using this location specifically for my video outputs means that right here from my main web page, I can go down into jobs, and I created this folder here called Timelapses. If I open it, I've got all of my video outputs right here, and so that way, even from my phone, I can just go in there and download it directly. That makes it so much easier than having to open up WinSCP every single time I want to download a new time-lapse video. I can just easily access them right here. So keep going down here, frame path, set it to this. This will be where the pictures are stored, the frames are stored. Down here, time format, leave this as the default, or you can change. If you want your date output different formatting, you can change it here. Snapshot URL, this one wasn't what my snapshot URL was. Mine was this one up here. So this is the IP address of my Raspberry Pi webcam action snapshot. And you can test this one out by follow link. If this shows a picture of what your webcam should be showing, that means it's working. Down here, you pixel format. This is a pretty good default for most cameras. YUV is just a different color space than RGB, and 420 subsampling is really good for most webcams and Pi cams. If you're using something more advanced, or if you have another video camera that you know has a higher chroma subsampling, then you could use that. This will be a default for most people. Down here, you can set extra output parameters, and this one I do have set to this. This gives a 5-second hold at the end, so it'll save that last frame for a few seconds. And this is all you need to change in your Moonraker config. You can hit save and restart up above. The next thing we need to create are our macros inside of printer.cfg. Hit edit, go down to your macros section. So these are the 3 macros needed. This is where you can get a little more advanced with what you want out of it. Me, I left it pretty basic. It doesn't move the print head away, because there are some downsides to that. Moving the print head away will slow down your prints and can introduce some stringing, but this is where you can put those in. I did copy them from the Moonraker website, these down here, but I also added the manual time-lapse render, so that way, like I mentioned, if a print fails or you have to cancel it, but you still want to make that render, you can just manually do it here. In the future, if I want to make some really good time lapses, I can come back to tweaking these settings. So now that we've got this new macro that will actually take the picture, we've got to make it so it's put into every layer change of our G-code. The easiest way to do that is in your slicer. I use Cura, and it's pretty easy in most softwares to change this. Go up to extensions, post-processing, modify G-code. This is what you want to input. The script is an insert at layer change. Before or after really shouldn't matter. I just left it on before and put it in right here, time-lapse take frame. That way it's baked into your G-code to take those pictures or not take those pictures. So if you've turned on time-lapse, you can't use things you've sliced in the past. You have to slice it specifically for using as a time-lapse. So now you can save and close Cura, save and close those macros. So that's all you need to get started making time lapses, but I did do some work on making my webcam look even better, and I wanted to step you through those right now because it's pretty simple once you know what you're doing. So one of the biggest settings that makes the biggest difference is your focus of the webcam. When it's not focused on the print, it'll just be blurry no matter how high quality your webcam is. And even pretty cheap webcams, if you have it correctly focused, it makes a pretty good looking video. So there's software already downloaded on your Raspberry Pi. It's called V4L, Video for Linux. I'll link the V4L website down below where all the commands are. The first one you're gonna wanna input to see if your webcam has an autofocus. So this command -L will list out all the parameters you can change. Make this bigger. Run that. Okay, here we go. So if you got this one, focus auto. So this is where autofocus is either on or off. It gives you great information. The default will default to autofocus being on. Currently it's off because I turned it off. The next one is your focus absolute value. Min 0, max 250. And you can take it in steps of 5. It is a little weird with this one with the 0 value being focused at infinity, and as you raise the value, it gets closer to you. At least with mine, it's the Logitech C920. So the 2 commands you want to run. First, run this one to set your autofocus to off. And then this is the next one, with that number being whatever works for you to get a good picture. So put your webcam where it's going to be, like here it's mounted, and then start stepping through until you find exactly what works best for you. For me, 30 works really well to get as much in focus as possible. So once you're done with that, these settings will revert if you restart your Raspberry Pi, but there is a way around that. We're gonna write it into this file that gets read at the startup of the Raspberry Pi. This is the command you need to enter, type in your password, and down here at the bottom of the file, type in these 2 lines. This one turns off your autofocus and then sets your focus to whatever you want. So if you change how you're mounting your webcam, go back into this file and adjust that number again. You can exit and save that file, and then if you reboot your Raspberry Pi, it should turn off autofocus and focus you right on where you need to. There are other parameters you can change, like turning off auto white balance, turning off the auto exposure. And if you have consistent lighting on your printer, those are good to go in there and tweak. For me, my printer is mostly lit by windows right now, so I do want to leave it on auto for those 2 settings. And that's all you need. You should be getting some nice looking time lapses now. A few notes about the installation. You may have noticed that I don't have the print head move away from the print and then take a picture. I find that detracts from the printer in 2 major ways. One, it slows down your print. It takes a lot of time, every single layer, to move away, stop, take a picture, wait, move back, and then resume print. That can really add up on long prints. And the big reason for using Klipper is to make quick prints. And so I'm still tweaking some of the settings to see if I can optimize it. I think my favorite right now is having the print head stop very briefly, then take the picture, then continue on. That way you don't get as much motion blur in the picture, but you don't have all that extra time of moving the print head away, moving it back. And the stringing, that's the next biggest issue, is the stringing issue of it. If your printer's perfectly dialed in with 0 stringing, it can work, but it still can be a bit of an issue. And so for me, I think it's just way easier to just leave the print head on where it is. But if you get yours calibrated and working well, I'd love to hear about it. But anyway, that wraps up all the steps you need. I hope this video has helped you out. And if it has helped you out, hitting that like button below really helps me out. I put a lot of time and energy into making these videos. And so the least you can do is just hitting that little like button. It helps me out tremendously, and it lets other people know that this video is worth clicking on. And now that your time lapses are working great, go out there and make amazing prints and make some good time lapses while you're at it. And I'll see you in the next video.